Aloha and welcome to Home is Here. Fitted Hawaiʻi was formed in 2005 by former pro skater Rene Matthyssen and designer Keola Nakaʻahiki Rapozo. A contemporary streetwear brand based in the heart of Honolulu, Fitted uses the non-traditional medium of apparel and hats to share stories about the history and culture of Hawaii.
Well, I grew up in Kahalu, Okana Road. My mother and stepfather, they were entrepreneurs themselves. We did the craft fair circuit. Where I come from, you hunt, you fish. I was around a lot of drug dealers, my uncles, everybody. That was normal, right? I didn't have any mentors other than these things I would read in the magazines or like these designers that I loved, or like rappers I could see that I couldn't touch. I would consider them mentors. Graduated from Castle High School, 1994. I'm dating myself. Went to Windward Community College, studied my liberals there. I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I befriended a librarian at the time. She was amazing. The librarian crew at Windward in those days, they were so great. She knew I was very interested in music and design or clothing design at the time. And she was like, hey, there's this interesting fashion technology program at Hawaii Community College. You should check it out. I was like, I'm barely doing my work here. And she's like, no, I think you'll be fine. You should just try it. She helped me apply. I got accepted. And I was like, whoa, I guess I'm going to fashion school. And yeah, so I started fashion school 1998. I graduated from the fashion program in 2000 with a degree. Carol D'Angelo, she was teaching sketching. She mentioned to a couple people in class that there's an internship at Tory Richard, and that if anybody was interested, you should apply. So I walked out of class, in the middle of class, and I called the number and I asked if I can apply for this internship. I got a meeting, and I sat down with Agatha and Amy Renshaw, and one of them asked me, so what do you want to do? I was like, I'll do anything. Sweep the floors, I'll fold garments, whatever it takes. Like, I'm here to just learn. Whatever you guys need me to do, I'll do it. I'll start tomorrow, 3 days later, I was there working, and my career started. While I was there, I learned a lot. I mean, I was able to tag along to magic shows. Magic at the time was the biggest, I don't know if you would call it a clothing show. It was much more than that. It was literally a convergence of every single aspect of the clothing industry at that time. And then I really gravitated towards this idea where I could just design and produce my own collection. And I did women's wear. I started with skirts and tops and accessories. Did a couple fashion shows, and then I decided to take my samples on the road. It was just me borrowing buddy passes from friends, and I would go to San Francisco, Magic, San Diego, LA, flew to New York, back to San Francisco, and then back home. But on this trip, it was sort of a coming of age for me. Here I was, I was just me solo, and I had all my samples, and I was just taking it to stores and showing people at Magic, showing people at Coterie in New York. I mean, I've never even been to New York. It's my first trip to New York, and here I'm taking my samples, thinking like these people are gonna buy, I had no idea what I was doing, but it was coming of age. I learned so much on that trip. Yeah, and I was able to sort of, gain a little bit of notoriety here in Hawaii. And then I hooked up with the boys at Information. They had a store at Ward, and I would just hang out, talk story with them. We just created a friendship, and they were cool, man. They had this little space upstairs in their attic, and they let me bring my sewing machine, my dress form, all my fabric, all my tools, and they said, "Right, you can have this space and just create whatever you want to create. Put it on the floor for consignment." I was working full-time at Tory. I was still at the gas station. I was valeting, and then I was finishing up one class. This is all sort of happening at the same time. While in my spare time, I would just stay there and just drape, cut, sew. There's a few years where I was able to really learn the process of trying to create my own brand, my own vision, everything. Rene Matthyssen, my current partner, he was flying home and he had just landed and he asked me where I was. And it was an interesting time for me. You know, I had just broken up with my girlfriend at the time. I moved out, I was sleeping on my sister's couch. It's a pretty nuts time. My mom had passed away. I was transitioning. At that time, Tori Richard had offered me salary. And so he came and he's like, hey, let's go take a walk. So he told me, he was like, you and I are gonna open up a hat store. And I was like, I'm doing this like this women's thing, you know? He's like, think about it, you know? We'll do hats and, you know, you can design everything and, you know, I'm not gonna do it with anybody else. You know, I got this good thing going with Tori. I was there 4 years at that point. You know, it was a career. And then I was like, I don't wanna be 30 and like wondering what if, you know? So I said, all right, done. Let's go. What are we doing? Like the next day we were just like started grinding. This was December 29, 2003. We started grinding from that point on. I was still working 3 jobs and this new thing was on my mind and I was obsessed with it. I didn't sleep. I mean, went to work, worked after, and then spent the whole night just working on Fitted. We opened our doors. This date is crazy, like no joke. We opened the doors, we blessed it, open for business, October 20th, 2005. It was 2 years from the same day that my mom passed away. It's consumed every hour of my life for the past 16 years. Yeah. Renee was born in LA, grew up in San Diego. Then his family moved here to Hawaii. Good part of his teenage years, he was traveling the world as a pro skater. And he had this really like interesting outlook on life. He saw things that I've never seen up until, you know, 2003. And I went on that trip. I barely went traveling. I've been to the Big Island, but that was it. Never been out of the country. So I didn't have a really deep perspective of the world, you know? But I knew what it was like to grow up in Kahalu. I knew what it was like to grow up in Hawaii. And he loved that. We could sort of like forge our own path. He was a pro skater, but I'm this country boy, you know? I grew up hunting and fishing and I have this weird, you know, love of fashion and design and the narrative was embracing identity, our own identity, who we are, and not being afraid of it. Like, we don't have to front like we're from a place that we're not from. Like, we're from here, you know, and just speak on the things that we know. Designing is adjacent to storytelling, right? Whether it be through mele, through oli, through hula, gestures, different types of gestures. We just use this different medium, different palettes, different fabric, different styles, different techniques to share our stories. Using the culture as inspiration just gives us a much more viable resource to speak from. We start at this point, and we're talking about food systems. The golden age of Waikiki was not the 50s, or was not even current times. You know, it was when Kalamakua was growing mass amounts of kalo, feeding the community. Nobody was going hungry. There was this lifestyle that they implemented, you know, this surfing, this canoe fishing, everything in that area was sufficient. If we are able to start our process in those stories, no matter what comes out of it, it may not look or be perceived as this core idea of Kalamakua and Waikiki, but that inspires, you know, just even knowing that back in those days, they would weave hats as gifts, you know, they would give freely. I think it's important for stories to start there and inform the process. It could not be the outcome, but it informs the process. And all these stories are very important from a design perspective, because to design something just because it's handsome or just because it looks good is, I think it's not taking full advantage of the opportunity. And I think we can't, as Hawaiians, we cannot be afraid to go and sort of reclaim, say, you know what, our ancestors was here. We're allowed to be here. This is our space, And if we don't occupy those spaces and continue to share stories of Kalamakua and Kelea and all of these old names of all the surf breaks down there, the battles of Puakehau, then we're not perpetuating, what's important. What is traditional Hawaiian culture? I've had this conversation. I've went down this road many times with many different people. I've had conversations with elders who are very strict with their mindset and resolve when it comes to, no, it's only this. And then I have mentors and kumus now who are much more open and understanding, and realize that the work that we're doing now, not me, everyone is doing now. Look, I'm Hawaiian, I'm a creative. This is how I make my living, this is how I feed my family, this is how I feed 16 other people and their families. How can this not be considered an iteration of innovation of cultural practices? And we innovated by observing. And through observation, whether it be ho'okele, kahuna kalaiwa'a, food systems, all of these things had to have been concepted, thought of, implemented, applied, whether through tooling, through fabrication, and an actual case study, and then putting your whole entire family on a boat. To me, that's the ultimate innovation. Traveling 2,500 miles to a place you haven't seen before, by observing birds, wind patterns, stars, currents. Hula itself is innovation of coded language, right? Food systems, ahupua'a was innovation. Loko'ai'a is innovation. Finding these instances where we can play this cultural flute, so to speak, but in a very contemporary way, and blend it with modern techniques and styling, but have like choke mana'o in it, I feel like that's particularly, to me, is thinking Hawaiian, but I dedicate myself to my culture and learning every single day so I can get better. For no reason other than just understanding where I come from, this amazing, beautiful place that we live, all of the sacrifices that our coops went through, and this abundance that was left to us. On our label, I have this quote that resonates with me, or that has sort of been a guiding principle. Was by Paea. E na iwali no oko I ku'upono a ole e pau. It kind of speaks to this responsibility now is on us. What it means to us, and it's broken down in this little ethos I have. Dedicated to life, past, present, and future. Embracing change to build a bridge for culture and youth to intersect. Respect daily, culture daily, Ike daily, mahalo daily.